welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for a tutorial on how to paint black fluffy fur. So today I'm going to be making a board like this, showing you the complete process of painting the black fluffy fur like on the cat. This was one of the tutorials that I lost in my phone. What I would do is, film one portion, turn off the camera, go do something, and film another portion. Well, certain portions disappeared, and I tried with Apple to retrieve them while they're gone. So anyway, what I'm going to do, because the portion of the tutorial from the underpainting, which was raw sienna and burnt umber, to the fluffy textured black layer, the first layer on top of the underpainting, that whole section just disappeared. So I'm going to do a board like this, and I'm going to show you the whole process of painting the black fluffy fur, but I'm also going to show you the remaining parts of the tutorial with the cat and how we got to the point of the beautiful fluffy cat completed. And I hope you enjoy that. I really appreciate you. Please, in the comments below, let me know if you have any questions about it, or you'd like to see something else painted. I'm going to definitely do a tutorial on the grass. You'll see little bits of that in this film. So I look forward to painting with you. Please like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. I appreciate you so much.
So we're going to learn how to paint this black fluffy fur like you see here on this cat. And I'm going to do a little sample board. I've got the underpainting here of burnt umber and raw sienna, and now I'm putting on and going in different directions, like creating some texture. I'm using burnt sienna, Mars black, and Dioxin purple. And if you were looking at a reference photo, you would want to go in the direction of the fur that you see. But I'm just doing a little sample here, so you see that I'm just adding some fluff and some texture over the underpainting. If you notice that this particular sample has a lot more brown in it than the samples above, those have more of a blue undertone to their fur. Even though a little bit later I do add some blue to the cat's fur, I use Mars black and Phthalo blue to make a real shiny silky blue in some of the shadowed areas. But here I use the brush to kind of create some fluff on whatever the animal might be, the cat or dog or whatever animal you're painting. And you see I've just kind of created some texture on top of that underpainting. And now I add a little titanium white to the mix, and actually a little bit of burgundy. And now I'm just kind of pulling it over, and I go in almost like a C motion for the different curls and waves, just kind of adding texture with some light paint here. And then I actually, with that lighter paint, I turn my brush so that I'm using just the edge of the brush to kind of make a little bit more definition in the waves or the curls in the fluffy fur. So again, just creating some texture basically for under the fur and bringing out a little fluff there on the side. And then pretending as if, or acting as if this is the top part of the animal, that fur would be a little bit more solid on the top, but then of course towards the end of your painting you'd want to add a little bit of some flyaway furs on the top as well. So now I've taken a little of that, like I was talking about, that Mars black mixed with Phthalo blue, and I'm adding in some dark texture there, which will assist in creating shadow once I start to put the details on top of the fur. So you want to keep this color going, in all different directions, so that you're again creating fur. Um, turn your brush as you're painting along. So now I'm taking my filbert grainer brush. It's I believe it's a 1/4 inch. I'll write that in the description below. And I'm now creating a bit more of a finer detail on top of the fur. And I'm just using the top part of the filbert grainer brush. A little bit later I turn it on the side and I create a little bit of soft fluff. But I love the very thin edge of the filbert grainer brush. And if you notice, I'm making curls, you see? So I'm turning my brush and I'm just adding a little section. So when you're creating fluffy curls like this, it's lots of different sections of fur. And here I brought back a little bit of the dark shadow. I got it a little too light. But then I added the white, and I'm making another section of fluffy fur. And you see how almost like a C, you go like the letter C in different directions to create the patches of fur. And that's a good way to put it. So now that we have a lot of patches of fur, now I just add some white with a little phthalo blue, and I'm bringing in some of the finer details, some of the little reflective pieces of hair on top of the fur. And as I add those, you'll see how those little sections or chunks of fur start to actually pop out, and then you see the shadow behind it, creating that nice fluffy texture, like it's long fluffy curls. So you want to have the paint thin on the brush, and again just using the tip part, the edge part of the filbert grainer brush. And so I make it a little lighter in certain spots and less bright in other areas, and that also adds to the dimension. And you see how just putting some highlights in the direction of, like I said, almost like a half C. That got a little bit light up there, a little bit too light for my liking, so I added back some shadow. I just picked up a little bit of that dark mixture for that silky black fur and added back some dark. Now here I'm making a wave. I'm going downward in one direction, and then I turn my brush in the opposite direction, and do you see how that just created a wave? So that makes that section one continuous wavy patch of hair. So you go downward in the one direction and then go in the opposite direction, and it makes a wave in the hair. So I put a little bit of the light white mixture back on there again. It's actually like a bluish gray. It's white with the phthalo blue, and it's on a dirty brush, so it still has a little bit of that gray in it. I didn't wash my brush in between. Now this is actually where I'm putting the bright white, a little bit brighter white with a little less of that gray in it, to really put that shine on top of the fur so that those sections stand out. So you're actually kind of putting a little bit of shine on individual hairs. And now I'm leaving this portion on here to show you that if you do put a little bit too much white, which I did in one area, just grab a little of the dark and pull it over that area that you got a little bit too white and just correct it. It's an easy fix. That's a wonderful thing about paint. Sometimes you have a happy accident, and sometimes you make a boo-boo and you just straighten it out with a little bit of a little correction, no big deal. So here I'm adding again, like I said, just some really bright fine lines on top of these chunks of fur. And do you see how, looking at that sample now, how fluffy it's looking? Now if you wanted to add in any other color, if you felt like, oh, okay, I needed a little bit more gold in this area, what you could do is make the wash, make a glaze of water and the gold, a gold color, like for instance maybe yellow ochre or some of your raw sienna, and just kind of wash it over those areas. And remember that when you're using a wash or a watered down paint to make a glaze, it doesn't actually cover all the fine furs. You'd see them through. It just adds a little bit of color. But I'm not going to do that here because soon we're going to be watching the tutorial section where I actually am painting the cat Enzo, and you'll see a lot of that taking place in that part of the painting. So you can just play with this as much as you want to, just add curls wherever you see fit, and or just decide that, okay, this looks good to me, and we'll move on to the next step, or I'm done, whatever looks right to you. But right now I'm looking at this and it looks like the sections are distinct. I've got some highlights on top of the different chunks of fur and the different fluffy sections. So I'm just giving you a close-up look of some of these sections of fur, and how again I'm just taking a little brighter white mixture and just kind of adding it on different parts of the hair just to help it to pop out. And the reason I zoomed in is so that you can see all those sections there, and you see how that dark color is basically playing a role of shadow for the sections. So here we go. This is the underpainting of my painting of Enzo, and like I said, it's the raw sienna and burnt umber. And then here we're at the point on the cat where the fur, I've already painted that fluffy texture on top of the underpainting. And I have the colors that I use all listed there on the side. So enjoy watching this. I am going to do a cat eye tutorial soon, if you all would like to see that. So I don't get into a lot of the detail of the eyes on this tutorial, since I'm basically focusing in on the fur and how to paint black fluffy fur. So I do show little bits and parts of my tutorial. It did survive my telephone crash, and so I leave those in so you can see the grasses being painted and a little bit of the eyes, but I'll do a separate tutorial on both of those features. So here I'm using that bright silky black mixture, the Phthalo blue and Mars black, and I'm adding in some of those areas of shadow where you just see a lot of that dark black texture, and a lot more details go on top of the fur. So when you look at your reference photo, you can see that there are a lot of darker values that you may need to put this very rich dark color on. So in the reference photo, the cat had this big chunk of fur that goes up in front of the bottom part of his face. You can see there. It was a big chunk of fluffy fur, and I end up putting a lot of detail into that. As I'm adding this black in different areas, it helps you to see the curls in the fur. And it also helps you to see the definition of where the legs are. So in the reference photo, Enzo was sitting on his owner's couch, and the window light was shining in, and but I went ahead and put him outside and leaning up against a tree. But in the picture, he was leaning up against the back of the sofa, so his little legs are scrunched up there, and you can see one of his front legs and the one back leg, and then his big fluffy tail, the way that he was kind of like leaning up against the back of the sofa. And I went ahead and put the sunlight on the top of the fur there, which would be coming out from the back of the tree, on that side of the tree rather, and just kind of highlighting that with the bright color. That would be the titanium white, phthalo blue, Mars black, so it was like a bluish gray. And with that, I'm also bringing in some of the lighter values on the top of the head there where the sun would hit, and then inside the ear. And in the ear, I did add a little bit more of the burgundy color, where you would see some, you know how the inside of ears has always got a little pinkish hue to it. So here we go, just adding some more twists and turns to the fluffy fur. And of course that background is without the detail that I added later on. I add more of a ray from the sunshine coming down, and then sort of a blurred out look to bushes way in the background, and more definition in where the lawn starts and the bushes end, so a horizon line is more defined later on. So here I'm just brightening up the areas where the sun is hitting the top of the back of the cat, and also pulling out a few of those little fluffy flyaway hairs on the top of the fur, which I add quite a bit more later. And then as you see, when you add this light color on top of these sections of fur, like I showed you in the sample, you see how it's turning the fur? So as I'm adding that lighter texture, it's creating the illusion that that fur is fluffy in those areas, because the higher sections of the fur would have the lighter color, which would create depth in the fur and make it look like a fluffy section of fur. So much fun. I love painting fluffy fur. Now I'm going over the top part of his foot, which is turned. That's the bottom that you see there, the dark part. You see the sole of his little foot, and a lot of dark there in shadow. And that long, funny looking thing is the root of the tree, which later is covered in grasses, and you just see a little bit of it popping through. I could also do a tutorial on trees. Trees are a lot of fun to show how to create the texture on trees. I think they're fun to paint. So if that's something you'd be interested in, I could do that as well. Even though I'd like to focus on pet portraits more so, I would gladly do tutorials on the tree, and I am going to do the one on the grasses, because one of my subscribers has asked for that, actually 2 of them, so that's something I definitely want to do. I hope you all liked the video and that you'll like and subscribe. Please hit like, because if you do like it, and don't hit dislike unless you dislike it, I guess. But anyway, if you do hit like, I guess that helps the algorithms of YouTube, and they like when people hit like on the videos. It lets them know that it's something that people are interested in seeing. So as I grow my channel, I really appreciate all those likes. I know it's hard to hit like when you're watching it on TV, because there is no just like button up there. You have to kind of hit the channel button, and then it'll pull up the like, and then you have to hit it with, you have to use your remote control, so it's kind of difficult unless you're watching it on an iPad or on your cell phone or something like that. But here I'm putting in the grasses, and I'm using a hooker's green and cadmium yellow medium, and in different areas I also add in some phthalo green, and I just pulled in those sprigs, and I make sure that some are turned in different directions. And back to the cat, of course. So lightening up different areas, just kind of bringing out those highlights around the nose and the mouth and the eyes. And here I pulled in back a little bit of the dark fur. It's starting to come to life, huh? Starting to look realistic. So just continue to add in the different colors in the fur. And as you notice, a black cat is never just solid black. We've talked about this before. There's always colors in the undertones. There's either blue black fur or ones that have a lot of brown undertone. And Enzo had a lot of brown undertones in his fur. And also it showed up because of the sunlight, of course, and reflective colors. It showed up as a lot of reddish or burgundy undertones. So for Enzo I used Dioxin purple to add to the color, and I also used a lot of brown, burnt sienna, burnt umber, and raw sienna, and I also used a bit of burgundy in the fur, and then titanium white. So I'm showing you how I have created the wild grass a little bit here, and we are focusing on the fur today, but here you notice that I put some brown broken pieces of grass, some little sprigs that are laying down that have been maybe stepped on or driven over or something like that. And then I go over it with my different mixtures of green. One is phthalo green with cad yellow, and the other is hooker's green with cad yellow, and then straight hooker's green. And I kind of keep going back to the palette and pulling in different colors so that it looks wild and realistic.
Just a little bit more on some of the bits of fur, but I don't want to get too precise on it. He is just a nice big fluffy cat, and I think that it's given a nice illusion already, the way that I've got it painted, where it looks soft and fluffy, like soft and fluffy fur, and it does give the impression of different pieces of fur going every which way, but I am going to put a little bit more detail into it. And then I think I'm going to call it a painting. Sign my name, varnish it, put it in a black frame, and off it goes.
So here I'm, like I was saying, brightening up that horizon line, and just using the edge of my 3/4 inch flat brush. I've got a cad yellow, titanium white, and some little tiny bit of hooker's green, and just a little bit, and I'm just brightening up where the sun would be hitting that grass from the horizon line going down. Now here I made a little glaze, and I used the hooker's green and watered it down and just kind of went over the in shadow area there. Then I'm just using the edge of the 3/4 inch brush, and I'm pulling some bright sprigs of grass over the top of everything. So you see how those brown sprigs that are broken pieces of grass have been covered over, where they're just kind of popping through a little bit through the brighter green grasses. So it looks very realistic when you do that. And you want to make sure, because grass never grow well, sometimes it does grow straight up, but usually has, when it's wild like this, it has some twists and turns and bent over pieces of grass. So you want to make sure that you go in all different directions, just kind of be real free and loose with it, and make some taller, some shorter, and all that. And then bring a little bit of the yellow in to brighten up some of the sprigs, so where there might be some reflective light shining on it. And then what I like to do down here is make the glaze and then make it very dark on the bottom, so that kind of frames in the picture. Now I'm back to the cat's fur, and I took a wash of the black, the Mars black and phthalo blue, and I'm just kind of darkening areas where it would definitely be in shadow from the tree that he's leaning on. But I'm also leaving some light areas there. When that glaze dries, you'll still see the light paint the details popping through, but it will add some of the more distinct shadowed areas. But I'm leaving some light areas too, where the reflective light would be bouncing off different sections of the fur. So I hope that watching this tutorial has helped you all learn how to create a very realistic looking fluffy black fur cat or dog or whatever kind of animal you want to paint that has this fluffy black fur. I hope that I've given you some idea of how to do that well. Now here I'm working on the tail a little bit, so I added quite a bit more brown into the mix because the tail just had like a little brown fluffy look to it, and just kind of adding some fluff here. And this is just a 1/4 inch angle brush that I'm using, and it's very dry on my brush. I have very little paint on the brush at this point. Just adding a little bit more fluff to that tail, like I said. And then I'm going to come in with my Philip Grainer brush. Yes, here I am. The Philip Grainer brush, and I just have very lightly on there added some titanium white to that brownish mixture, and so just adding some definition to the tail. And then with that same light color, I do some highlights over in different sections of the fur around the back side of his tail, or the very beginning of his tail there in the back side of his back. So just adding some definition. Back to the grasses a little bit, so I'm doing that glaze on the bottom with a little bit of the hooker's green and watered down, just kind of making sure that the in shadowed areas is nice and dark, and I love how it frames out the picture when it's all dark down there on the bottom. So this little cat is nestled in, nice and cozy. The sun is shining and it's coming down on his back. And here I'm just adding some definition to those background trees that I actually want to leave as like blurred out. The sun is shining and kind of in the way of seeing any definition in the trees. It's far in the background, just blurred out section of trees back there. This wasn't at all in the reference photo, just in my imagination. And also I do lighten up that hard line on the ray of sunshine coming there before I finish the painting. It's softened quite a bit. So have fun painting, everyone. It's been great painting with you in this tutorial, and I thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you will follow me, subscribe to my channel, and also follow me on Instagram at Robin_Landau_pet_portraits. Robin Landau Pet Portraits. I would really appreciate it. So thanks again, and you all take care. Bye-bye.